Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Golden Opportunities and Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channels. This is the Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling Series. This is for the 19th of September, 1981. Certainly worth taking a peek at our new series, and welcome if you're new. Anyway, Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling, I've never watched all the way through. Seen a lot of good stuff from it, but never actually watched it episodically. There's about 200 episodes up on the network, and we'll check other sources as well. Try and bring you the most comprehensive version of that possible. Rick Harris and Mike Miller versus Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood is your major run here. But before that, Ron Bass cut the basic promo, basically saying he's new in the area and he'll help whatever babyfaces need his help along the way. That's the basic premise of the promo. Steamboat recently, as mentioned, coming back from a trip to the land of Japan and other overseas tours, claiming to want to learn more about martial arts there. Steamboat stepping through and kind of having a couple of runs there. We see, a couple of drop kicks from his partner Jay Youngblood. Youngblood and Steamboat certainly having quite the team in 1983. We will get there, but for now, pretty big deal at the time. Tackle by Steamboat and going right after Harris. Harris obviously shown to be a bigger guy. Steamboat kicking off and trying to keep his man under wraps and basic wrestling by Steamboat. Beautiful baby faces. And just in terms of getting crowd reactions in the small studio, obviously they're used to seeing wrestling on a regular basis. And then Mike Miller comes in, pounding a bit on Jay Youngblood. Youngblood spins him around and gives it back to him. Trading the forearms, all the forearms look snug and they don't look like, guys taking strikes for nothing. Tag off to Steamboat. Steamboat comes back into the middle of the ring. Steamboat, probably the quicker of the two, not because he's faster, but because he certainly has a little bit more experience there. Steamboat managing to stay with Miller pretty aggressively, assertively during the process. And we kind of get tagged back to Rick Harris. Harris comes in, brawls a little bit more with Steamboat. The Youngblood comes back in. One thing that's really cool is there's a lot of interplay and tagging between Steamboat and Youngblood. You can see that they, in fact, will become a decent team. Chops and drop kicks and the like by Youngblood. Youngblood, I think, had a lot of potential. Would have been cool if he had survived, obviously, for personal reasons, but also from a professional standpoint, I think Jay Youngblood could have been a major force in the sport going forward into the rock and wrestling area. That being said, Harris manages to use his weight, kind of get some ride time on Youngblood pretty aggressively, gets him going pretty good, and then we kind of see the cutoff. Mike Miller, not exactly a happy guy, takes back elbow. Finally, Steamboat comes in and gets the crossbody and the win for his team. Steamboat getting the win because I think he's got more cachet in the area. Then we go to Sergeant Slaughter as your second match of the day. Sergeant Slaughter and Ron Ritchie. Sergeant Slaughter probably takes more out of this match than one would normally. Takedowns and kind of ride time by Slaughter. Slaughter also sending his opponent into the match. Ritchie does look competitive a couple times, but obviously Slaughter has both the experience advantage and the power advantage. Comes back around, and it's clear that Sergeant Slaughter's doing the military gimmick there. Tries to crank up on the arm, stays on the arm, gets a couple of, positions where he's pretty dominant. Short knee to the midsection, and then attempted the Cobra Clutch. Going forward, Slaughter gets obviously a victory there, and we move forward into the next in the series of matches. This is Jake Roberts and Jim Nelson. Nelson later, of course, becoming Boris Zukov, but takedowns by Roberts. Roberts even grapevines the leg gets him in a little bit of a surfboard. Interesting because Nelson hasn't really been established as a babyface or a heel really yet in the area, at least not where we're starting the programming. Obviously, I wish the stuff was available from the 70s forward. Actually, love to see, even if the TV goes back to the 60s or whenever it started. Things started 73, but anyway, would love to have just been able to see that, but obviously a lot of the 70s stuff not available. But Roberts stays on the arm of his opponent here. Not stumbling across the DDT quite yet. I think he stumbles across the DDT in 82, 83, something like that, but manages to use a running knee lift as a major finish there. We see Nelson comes back with a couple of shots to the midsection, almost the kidney area of Roberts. Takes the man over with a snap mare and gets some ride time on a reverse chin lock. Back when guys actually knew how to fight out of holds and make things look a little more involved. Ole Anderson though comes out, distracting Jake Roberts. Obviously, speaking to the nature that they have a ongoing feud, a feud that I don't know much about, obviously, because I'm coming into September '81 as a pretty new viewer. And anyway, giving Nelson a little bit of an advantage. He hits a backbreaker, and then obviously Jake Roberts, a little bit behind the eight ball. Roddy Piper has also made his way out, so there's an alliance, an allegiance between Roddy Piper and none other than Ole Anderson, which strikes me as weird because I can't imagine Anderson really being a pro Piper guy. But anyway, Roberts eventually comes back, hits the knee lift, and gets the win. Babyfaces have to run out. Ole Anderson basically says that he didn't need to get in the ring to cause trouble. He didn't need to get into the ring so he could get suspended. And Roddy Piper obviously talking about, in a great way, wanting to cause discord, wanting to cause disrespect. Sergeant Slaughter wants challenges. That's the impetus of his major promo coming up next. And Ron Bass out next, your television champion. The television championship at the time, on the line for the first 15 minutes of any given match. That seems to be something that they emphasize almost every television show, which makes sense if you have a special rule for a championship. Pretty cool deal there. And obviously Ron Bass, facing off against Charlie Fulton here. Charlie Fulton, a guy who really has kind of been around for quite a while, does more enhancement work than predominantly anything else, but has a decent match here. Hangs on Bass, who is your new television champion of a couple of weeks, hangs onto the arm, gets a inside spinning toe hold type maneuver, tries to get a submission out of Charlie Fulton. I would say in general, if you want to learn about selling and psychology, Mid-Atlantic, even in these first episode and a half, 2 episodes, although I have watched all the way up to April, May 1982, but routinely getting more out of moves, guys should watch Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. That's just, it's so much could be learned from getting more out of doing less, and I think there's ultimately something to that even today. Even if you were switching between MMA holds every 20, 30 seconds so as not to kill the illusion, I think you could still get so much more out of holds. Anyway, Fulton does take his man down for a little bit, reverse chin locks, but then we finally do see a step through by, and almost a reverse hammerlock by Ron Bass. Bass managing to kind of crank back on the hammerlock, almost an Indian deathlock style on the wrist. So an interesting run there. They both come up at the same time, start brawling with each other. And then again, Bass with a bit of a takedown. Always back to the mat, always back to basic wrestling maneuvers when necessary, but they do pick up the speed from time to time when it looks like, the crowd may be falling off, but also wrestling was treated as combat back then, or at least for the average fan, there was a wonder, especially for the kids. Anyhow, Ron Bass managing to get the victory, big body slam, and does kind of follow up, gets the victory, and is still your television champion over Charlie Fulton here. We then kind of run through the victory. By the way, he grabs with a power slam. And another tag match. This tag match is for the benefit of Ole Anderson and, kind of there. Anderson and Piper teaming up here. Their opponents for the moment are, in fact, and Piper doing the bagpipe thing. Paul Jones and Frank Monty versus Piper and Ole Anderson. Piper and Anderson trying to get under the fan's skin. Anderson, a guy that I wish there was so much more footage of, because I like the way that he, um, you know, portrayed kind of the realism of wrestling, and certainly his promos are classic. Anyway, Monty comes in, manages to brawl a bit. Piper in yellow and green tights, just a really weird combination. Monty manages to stand with him a little bit and fight. Tries to choke him out over the bottom rope. Piper does get some basic maneuvers, things like a, front face lock, basic stuff. Piper looks small here in '81, even maybe not as small as he did in like the '70s, but you can definitely tell that Roddy Piper is in fact not a major force guy. Then you see Anderson takes his man over, cranks up on the chin of his opponents here, cuts the ring off very well, continuing to do the Anderson thing of picking a body part, sticking with it, this time the majority of the head, but also working over the arm. Anderson's so good at getting under people's skin, but making things look like they hurt. Also, Piper comes back in and still maintains to be a brawler here. We then get kind of a beat down there. The baby faces do eventually make a run in, just because Piper won't break holds, and then baby faces including Jake Roberts, Ron Bass, and Ricky Steamboat all kind of close the program with a promo basically saying the heels aren't going to be allowed to get away with this stuff anymore, which also carries over into the next week as well, just in terms of the approach there. But then we will close on that note. We'll be back with more right after this.